Hi, I'm Katie Crane, and this is the Pilates Lounge.
Hey there, friends. This is Katie Crane. I'm the Pilates professional. Welcome to the Pilates Lounge. Today, I'm a little bit excited about sharing this episode with you because I'm going to go over a few FAQs, a few questions that I often get from potential students, but also from Pilates professionals who are already trained and they're trying to get their head around the difference in potential programs that they could become certified in. Now, if you have not already checked out, I'm also a little bit excited that we are now hosting my 6-month Pilates professional mentoring program in 4 locations Australia-wide. Don't worry, you have not missed out. Now, in Byron Bay, we will be kicking off April 20th. Now, this is a super short runway, so I'm going to be straight up about it. If we don't get the numbers by April, we're going to push that out until May. So don't worry, reach out and we can have a chat about whether or not this program is for you. And then in May, I am also rolling the program out in Subiaco in WA and in the beautiful Somerville Mornington Peninsula. Now, I've got these 3 studios on board, and of course, we teach the mentoring program in Darwin. That's my home studio. But I'm so thrilled to have these 3 extra studios on board. And I've specifically chosen these studios because they have mentors within the studio that are going to personally walk the students through the entire 6-month program. Now, our Reformer program to become a Pilates instructor is quite unique in that it's a blended format. So that means that we meet up for 4 entire weekend workshops and we go through all of the repertoire with you, but we also go through some very important workshops associated to the principles of Pilates. And then you can also access all of the work online, which means that students can practice becoming Pilates professionals any time of the day, any day of the week, wherever they are. Now, the host studios also offer student discounts and mentoring days with the host. So this is really important as far as becoming an instructor with Pilates Pro Academy. So if you're keen, then just below this in the show notes, you will see a link and you can check it out. So today's chat or today's conversation that I would like to have with you is all about teacher training. Now, whether you are already a Pilates professional or whether you are considering becoming a Pilates professional, or maybe somebody, your sister, your brother, your mother, your aunt, your grandma, whoever it is, has a passion for Pilates and is considering taking the leap. I know just how confusing it can be trying to decide which is the best school, because marketing these days is so good at tugging on your emotional heartstrings. And sometimes what the marketing campaign is telling us is not what the outcome is. So I'm going to give you 3 reasons why you might choose an online teacher training program. Now, there are quite a few online learning institutes for Pilates, and most of the time the outcome would be that you would end up either a mat instructor teaching Pilates mat work or a reformer instructor teaching reformer classes. Both of those are very popular ways to practice Pilates, and they are either a great way for somebody from the clinic to graduate into, or maybe they're a stepping stone for somebody to experience Pilates, or maybe it's a great way for somebody to optimize their health and get to move in a way that they might not be moving in the gym, or use Pilates as all of the cross-training benefits. As an instructor, you would generally be teaching either on the mat or a reformer in a group class. So people might choose to become an instructor of one of those by doing what's called an online certification. Everything is online. There's a heck of a lot of information. Some of the course outline is very good, is quite in depth. And some of those course providers have actually been around for a little while now. And to look at the course where from an observer's perspective, it looks like it's pretty solid. There's no doubt about it. And the marketing is absolutely brilliant. There's definitely no doubt about that. But from the trained Pilates professional's eye, there are some things that I need you to consider for your own benefit. So while there are some reasons that you would do Pilates teacher training that's just online, there is no face-to-face component. Quite often it's cheaper because the company is not paying rent to a studio, not paying wages to a presenter, potentially not paying for flights. So if I went down to Byron Bay, I've got to pay for flights, a car, accommodation, and all those things. So potentially there's a money saving aspect. And I get it. Money can be hard for people. Sometimes we look at things and we consider the short-term outcome. And sometimes money is a big part of that short-term outcome. In general, the general rule is you will always get what you pay for. Having said that, I have seen online Pilates teacher training courses that are the same price as face-to-face learning options. So be very aware of that. If the course provider is not having to pay for flights, accommodation, a studio, all of that sort of stuff, be very aware that potentially a lot of their money is going into marketing, which is fine. Marketing is a thing. We all have to market. We're all in business. Another reason that a student or a potential student might choose an online certification is that it's easier. There's no one standing over you, telling you, giving you feedback that what you're doing isn't good enough, isn't correct, isn't what the course is asking of you. There's no personal accountability. Makes it easier. And you know what? It can be really hard taking on board criticism from people. It can be really difficult. And sometimes it just feels better in the moment to not have to deal with that. The reality of it is, if you don't learn very early on your training experience what the Pilates principles are, how to apply them in your own body, how they feel and how they really feel, and how well you are performing them when you start practicing and how much you improve over time, it's going to be very difficult for you ever to be able to hand on that information to a body in real life. Another reason that a student might choose an online education is that it's accessible anywhere. You can do it anywhere you go. You could do it from anywhere. So if you live remote, or if you live somewhere that doesn't have face-to-face teacher training, or if you work a job that doesn't give you time off, that you get to the weekends, then of course, then maybe you feel like online is the only way to go. And you know what? That is one of the things that is marketed to you. That is one of the things that we see being hounded by the online course creators. It's for everybody. You can do it anywhere. The reality of it is, becoming a Pilates instructor takes commitment, takes courage, it takes a sense of urgency, it takes being uncomfortable, out of your league, out of your depth, and inconvenience. That is all part of becoming a Pilates instructor. In fact, FYI, it's a part of doing anything that's worth doing, anything. So whether you are embarking on a learning program, a training program, or whether you are learning a new thing at the gym, or whether you're learning a new exercise on the reformer, whether you're getting into an ice bath and you haven't been in it for a while, whether you're sitting in a sauna, they all feel uncomfortable. They all give us this feeling that we don't want to be here right now. We'd rather be doing something else. And you could tell yourself that you don't have time, that it's too hard for you to get to somewhere, that you don't have space in your calendar, that you're busier than the rest of the world. But the reality of it is everybody is the same busy as everybody. It's just that some people will prioritize certain things and other people don't. I may be the bearer of bad news to you. Now, there are the only 3 reasons that I could really think of that anybody would choose an online education. And I'm talking about online as in you've never taught Pilates before. This is the first experience that you're ever having to become a Pilates teacher. And I don't care if you have got a diploma in exercise science or you're a personal trainer with 20 years experience. Doesn't matter. It's not Pilates. I don't care if you're a physiotherapist with 20 years under your belt. It doesn't matter. It's not Pilates. If you want to become a Pilates instructor and really hold your own space and really change lives, then you need to be considering a face-to-face training option. Now, I'm going to give you some reasons why. You get hands-on experience. Hands-on experience is the most valuable experience you will ever have, both as a brand new student to Pilates and for further education. I'm only sharing my own experience with you. I'm only sharing this from nearly 20 years, 2 decades of doing this work and a lifetime of I've only ever worked in the fitness field. So I don't, apart from waiting tables and working with horses, but I don't have anything else that I am an expert at except working with the body, whether it's animals or people. You need to get hands-on. And I'm not talking like just getting a friend on a machine and practicing parroting the exercises that you are hearing and looking at on an online platform. I'm talking about you getting your hands on another body and your mentor being there with you to explain to you and to the body that you're working with what your mentor is seeing, because it takes years and years to see the idiosyncrasies in the body in movement. And I recognize that now as an educator, that the things that I see today, I definitely did not see when I was first practicing becoming an instructor. But I definitely remember some really key experiences that I had with my mentor where she was sharing with me what her eyes were seeing, and she helped me see that. And that simply could not happen if I wasn't in the room with her, with a body in front of me. It simply could not happen. And it might be something as simple as, say you're doing footwork on the reformer. Let's take a really foundational exercise. And you've got all your cues right. You're doing the first foot position. So heels on the bar, feet parallel. Legs are extending, legs are bending, pushing the carriage out, bringing the carriage back in. It looks like to your eye as a student that the person is doing the right job. Their feet are there on the bar. They're pushing their legs out, bringing the legs in. They're not all over the place. The body looks like it's in good alignment. But then your mentor comes along and she or he can see with their trained eye that there's a little bit of pronation, so a little bit of rolling of the foot. And they help you see that with your untrained eye. And then there on the spot, they give you strategies of how to help the person improve their footwork. And it's like magic when the person then says, wow, now I feel my entire leg's working. I wasn't feeling anything before. So a couple of things have happened. A, of course, your mentor with their trained eye has seen something that you simply cannot see because you haven't seen enough bodies. And the person that you're practicing on, the body, who thought that they were getting the experience that they should be getting because you didn't tell them otherwise and they don't know what they haven't been taught, they think that this is what footwork feels like. But all of a sudden, your mentor has stepped in and it's like she's just put whipped cream, sprinkles, and a cherry on top of that beautiful ice cream sundae that you served. There's nothing better for everybody than that experience right there. And you will never forget that. You will put that experience in your toolkit and you will be able to share that with every person along the way that you ever meet. And that'll happen when you do face-to-face mentoring or face-to-face workshops. That will happen. Say in our teacher training program, we teach over 85 reformer exercises, and every single exercise, we have that experience. So the way that we teach it in our weekend workshops, say I'll do all of the footwork and I'll choose one of the students as the body and I'll go through each footwork position. And even with the body in front of me, I can already see, because it's a real body, I'm giving them some feedback to help them get the most out of their footwork. And it's feedback that nobody has ever given them before. They've probably even done reformer classes. It's really common, but they've never had the feedback that they're getting right here, right now. And part of the reason is that the reality is they've probably been coming to reformer classes. Maybe there's 10 people in the class. And as instructors, we just can't get to everybody. And so if they look like they're doing something well, they may never have an opportunity to work one-on-one with the instructor to really dive deep into that movement experience. But it's not the be-all and end-all. There's 10 people in the room and everybody's coming in. They're all moving. They're all exercising. They're all practicing all of the Pilates principles, or those principles are being taken into account. It's a great experience for everybody. It doesn't have to be perfect for everybody in the room. What does have to happen is that as an instructor, I need to know exactly in my body what I should be feeling in absolutely every single exercise. And if I don't feel that, and if I don't get to see that in that training room with other bodies experiencing other things, so after I've taught that on the one body that I've chosen or that has put their hand up, then I hand that over to the trainee instructors. They get together in pairs, sometimes in threes, depending on how big the group is, and they practice on each other. And as they're practicing teaching on each other, I'm going around the room and giving them feedback that I see with my 2 decades of trained eye, things that they simply cannot see, because I'm looking through the lens of tens of thousands of bodies that have been on the machine in front of me doing footwork. They're looking through the lens of the one body that they've only ever seen doing footwork. So within that session, say I've got 10 students and they're all working together. When I see something that is maybe a little bit interesting or a little bit unusual, or it looks like the person may be struggling and maybe I can help them improve the movement so that it feels better, so that they connect deeper, so that they can start to understand how the slings of the body work in movement, then the whole class can gather around in that moment. So maybe I had Joanne on the reformer to start with showing the footwork. Okay, got you sorted out with your pronating feet. Everybody saw that. Everybody heard my cues. These are some things that we can do. But then I see Tony and she's a little bit different. Hey, guys, come and gather around here. Can you see what's different between what Joanne was doing and what Tony's doing? Yes or no? Quite often it'll just be silence in the room. They don't see it. Even though what I see is very clear right there, right then, they simply don't see it because they still don't have the trained eye until I point it out. Oh, yeah, now I see it. So maybe it'll be that their ankles are rocking and rolling forwards and backwards, that they're not actually stabilizing through the ankle. They're not actually stabilizing through the tibia and the bones of the feet. They're just rocking on the bones of the feet. And then when I change it, and then she says, oh, wow, I really feel my leg muscles now. Bang. So these experiences are what we get when we work in a room with other students and a trained eye. Not only that, getting your hands on, and then you get to feel it. You get to see it. You get to practice how you might cue it. So obviously in everybody's manuals, it's the same as all the manuals. I've seen about 20 different schools of manuals. We all have different cues, different muscles that are working, the setup, the breath, all that sort of stuff, right? That's pretty standard. And then in the video, however the video rolls, most schools now offer a video for each exercise. That's great. But getting hands-on with other people in the room allows you to get hands-on with multiple bodies. So each time you have a different experience with different bodies, and in turn, every experience you have is another tool for your toolkit. And then, as well as getting hands-on, you also get eyes on you. So it's very different seeing on somebody else's body what they are doing, but then you experiencing in your body what you are doing compared to what you perceive you are doing. It can be very different. I'll give you some examples of what I saw in studio at our weekend mentoring course. On the first weekend that we had our students just a couple of weeks ago, these were some things that are actually really common, but they stuck out to me. So we talk about neutral pelvis, neutral spine, natural body position. This is how we find it. You're laying supine on the reformer, laying on your back with your feet on the bar, and then you're maintaining that body position as you're pushing out and in. Say on footwork, right? I'll often use footwork just because it's easy for you to envision, easy for me to use as an example. What's the task in footwork? Hip disassociation. So the legs are moving, but the body is maintaining the same shape, aka pelvic lumbar stability. So the body is not rocking and rolling, not flexing and extending. It's maintaining the same shape as your legs are moving. Within the 10 students, I look over and I'm reminding people, this is when you inhale, this is when you exhale. I look over and I can see that one of the girls is bracing. She's not breathing. She's holding her breath. And so then I say to her, you need to breathe. Let go of that breath. And I keep cueing that. Oh, she says, I didn't even realize that I was not breathing. She didn't realize that she was holding her breath. So if I wasn't there in the room with her, with my eyes on her, she would have had nobody there to let her know that she wasn't breathing. She was concentrating so much. She was listening so much. She was in the moment so much that she was holding her breath. So what happens? If she did that for a long period of time, let's say for argument's sake that the online learning process was 6 months long, same as our face-to-face learning process. After 6 months of constantly bracing, constantly holding your breath when you're doing something like footwork, what are things that might come about, might present themselves in the body? We could say a tight lumbar spine, a tight diaphragm, tight psoas, tight shoulders, tight neck. Like she's bracing her whole body. So none of those are the benefits of Pilates. So Pilates promises our clients that they're going to end up with improved flexibility, if that's what they need, improved mobility, if that's what they need, improved strength, if that's what they need. But if you're going to spend the whole time bracing, then none of that is promised in the Pilates class. But she didn't even know. And I've seen her in studio a few times and asked her how's she going with her breathing when she's practicing footwork, because our students come into our studio and they're self-practicing and practicing within our community for the whole 6 months. She confessed that she's finding it quite difficult when she's focusing, when she's really concentrating on something, to breathe. And it comes from other activities that she was doing before she started Pilates, where in the other activity that she was doing, she was taught to hold her breath when she was loading up on something. We are teaching to exhale when you're loading up on something. It's different. It's a new lesson for her. And she almost has to unlearn a habit that she had already learned. And it's taking our eyes on her all the time, both myself and my other instructors in the studio, to keep reminding her, breathe. You're holding your breath. Breathe. Sometimes it might take that we stop the exercises and we just practice breathing then and there. Hands on the rib cage, feel the rib cage moving, feel the belly moving, breathe in and out through the nose, feel the shoulders relax, get settled. But if she was learning online, nobody was there for her to let her know that she was bracing. So what happens when she gets out there and she's teaching other people? How good do you think she's going to be identifying when somebody else is bracing? She's not, because she doesn't know the difference between bracing and not bracing. She thought that she was breathing. Another common one that we see often in the studio is, say, when you've got your forefoot on the bar and you're doing like your second foot position. So we do heels parallel, then toes parallel, or forefoot parallel, and then small V. Quite often people will either be dropping their heel under the bar every time they push out, so they're not stabilizing through the ankle. And that's the difference between having your heels on the bar with full footwork and your forefoot on the bar and footwork is ankle stability. So if your heels are dropping under the foot bar every time you push out, you are not performing Pilates. It's as simple as that. I'm not sure what it is you're doing, but it's not Pilates. Or the other one that I see often, and I saw both of these on the other weekend, is the heels are way too high. I call it Sarah Jessica Parker heels. You don't need Sarah Jessica Parker heels. They look beautiful in New York fashion. They are not functional. It's not what most people need. But what you will see is somebody who has very high arches in the feet. Once they're on the toes, just getting them to elevate the heels a little bit, they're already in their Sarah Jessica Parker heels. Compared to somebody who has flat arches, they really have to lift up the heels a lot to even get to the heel raise that I want them to be in. So within that class, within that group of students, I'm able to point this out to students. Look, this student, she has got high arches. And then ask her, how high do you feel like your heels are right now? They're not, she will say. Okay, cool. We'll just drop them down a little bit because she doesn't need to go so high in her when she's on her forefoot to lift her heels. She doesn't need to go so high. She lives with these high arches. We don't need to be exacerbating that for her. She's better off relaxing down a little bit compared to the person who doesn't have high arches. She may be feeling, or they may be feeling, that they're elevating the heels quite high to get to the same point that the person with high arches gets. We discussed that in the room. I pointed out in the room, students, you get your eyes on that. Do you see the difference? Okay, let's get feedback from those students. What do you guys feel? What's the difference? And what's the difference that you feel when we get you to the height that I want you to be, which in my mind is not a Sarah Jessica Parker heel. It's not a ballet flat. It's a clog, or I call it a kitten heel. Back in the 90s, kitten heels were really fashionable. So you might remember them, but I might be speaking outside of my generation. But a kitten heel is, or a clog, or a cowboy boot, depending on who I'm teaching and where I'm teaching. I might use those three different analogies. But I've got my eyes on people, and then the students can get their eyes on the entire class. It's so important. This is the minimum that you deserve as a student. And this is what students are missing out on if they're not getting these face-to-face experiences. There is no way in the world I could cover all of this online. And if I did, the students still could never be expected to understand when it's applicable. We need to get our eyes on and our hands on in the room. It's as simple as that. I could go through so many different experiences. One more, say we're doing footwork again. We're talking neutral body position, your natural body shape, maintaining that while you're doing your footwork. And again, I can see that somebody's bracing and she's breathing, but I can see with my trained eyes that the whole cylinder in her torso is super tight, and she would be driving that from her back. She's not driving it from her legs. I understand that in my trained eye, and I can give her strategies of how to alleviate her back being the driving force. So if you're doing footwork on the reformer, your back is not driving. Your legs are your driving force. In fact, you're laying on your back. This is a time that you shouldn't feel that your back extensors are driving at all. They're not the catalyst, and they're really not taking hardly any of the load at all, especially if you tend to have a tight back. And I can only see that in people when I've got my eyes on them when they're on a machine, but I can see it pretty much immediately. I can see when people brace. And so then I can give them strategies of how to let that go. And only when they let those back muscles go is the core going to engage. It's as simple as that. So what happens, say if you're doing your footwork on the reformer and every time you push out, you feel a lot of tightness in your back, that's the driving force. When that happens, those back extensors almost work. I think of them like scaffolding. Scaffolding is amazing, especially if you go to Bali. If you've ever been to Bali and they make these amazing bamboo scaffolding and they strap it all together, it's all done by hand. It's so much better than our Australian scaffolding, so much more beautiful. But in any case, it's not designed to hold the building up long term. It's only designed a short-term fix while the foundation is built and while the interior of the house is built. They put up all the pylons on the inside of the house, then they build to the outside of the house, then they take the scaffolding down. So your back extensors in something like footwork and in a lot of exercises, especially supine work, your back extensors, if they're driving, then they're acting as scaffolding. And then what you'll find in the body is that if that scaffolding is working all the time when it's not designed to, then the abdominals won't bother working. They're almost like, whatever, scaffolding's holding this building up, we're going to take a break. But then that becomes a chronic issue. And if somebody ever tells me that they've been going to reformer classes and they got a sore back from it, that's what's happening. Their core is not engaging simply because the scaffolding is doing all the work. So what they need to do is strip away the scaffolding, learn how to let those back extensors go, how to switch the core on, and only then are they doing Pilates. Again, otherwise it's not Pilates. So I don't really care what somebody calls what they're doing, but if any of this is happening either in your teacher training program and you're experiencing these things in your body, or if your students are experiencing them in your classes, or if you've experienced them in your classes, you're not doing Pilates, I would say, why don't those people call it exercise on a reformer that may or may not injure you, but not Pilates? Like seriously, it's become so confusing for people. And this is the problem, is that students aren't getting the support that they deserve. It's as simple as that. You deserve more than online content as a student. You deserve somebody making sure that you're getting it right. Because when you step out in the world as a Pilates instructor, the reality of it is the people that come into the studio, even if you're doing Pilates for fitness, they do have sore back, sore knees, flat feet, high arches. They've got all the things. And if you haven't seen multiple bodies over and over again, because I can tell you what, the first time I say something within that mentoring session, it's like deer in headlights when I look around the room. Nobody understands what I'm saying. You might get a couple of nods, but really they're just nodding because they think that they should be seeing what you want them to see. But it's very clear that nobody is seeing what you're pointing out. It doesn't happen until we've gone over and over the same stuff over and over again. And we know as Pilates professionals that a lot of the work is layered. So then once we've done footwork, then that's going to apply to any time you've got your feet on the bar. It's often going to apply to standing work. It could even apply to feet and straps. So then we get to repeat that concept over and over again. And it's pretty much how the body learns. Sometimes if we're doing something with a client and they're just not getting it, we don't just keep doing that exercise because they're not getting it. What we need to do is find a different exercise that entails the same concept, see if they can nail that, and then come back to the exercise that they're struggling with later, at a later date, maybe 6 weeks down the track, 6 months down the track, and then they get it. If somebody once said to me, you can't just keep performing the same thing that's not working. It's like hitting a dead dog against the wall and hoping that they're going to come back alive. It's not going to happen. So eyes on, hands on. This is how we learn. As well as your own self-learning, as well as your own self-understanding of what you are feeling in your body, what is happening in your body, and what you are seeing in the bodies in front of you, what about learning how to hold a room? One of the hardest things that I see in our face-to-face teacher training program is the first moment that I say to the students, okay, they're the 5 exercises. Now I want you guys to go practice that together. You're going to teach each other. So pair up with somebody that you've never met before and practice teaching that together. In the first 5 seconds, there's crickets. Not a word is said in the room. Everybody feels very uncomfortable all of a sudden. And within that room, pretty quickly, you figure out who in the room has got experience, speaking in front of people. So maybe they've got a customer service experience that can help. If you waiting tables, working in a clothing store, working at the front of house somewhere, then that is a way that you get to speak in public. Or maybe you're a teacher, maybe you work in the education system, maybe you're a personal trainer, maybe you do something else in a speaking capacity. That becomes very apparent within the room who has got experience and who hasn't. And then I tend to pair people up, somebody who has experience with somebody who doesn't. Because quite often people who have experience, they gravitate to each other. And then the people that don't have experience, they're left standing there, scared out of their pants and not knowing how to get words out of their mouth. But even the people that do have experience teaching or talking or doing stuff face to face with people, everybody really struggles to get the words out of their mouth when it comes to teaching Pilates. And it's something that students deserve to practice in a safe space, not just be put out in the world on the floor and expected to hold a room, because that's what you need to be able to do. To teach a good class, you don't just need to know how to teach the exercise. You need to know how to capture every person in that room. They need to be listening to you. They need to be acting on what you're inviting them to do. And they need to be understanding what it is that you're saying. And if they're not understanding it, you need to have other ways to cue. And you need to have strategies of seeing when people are struggling. And if you haven't been practicing those strategies with people along the way as you're learning, good luck getting out in the big wide world, because even after a couple of decades of teaching, sometimes I'll be teaching a class and I'm getting nothing from the audience. I'll be teaching a class and maybe I say a joke, nobody laughs. Or maybe I say something that I think is an amazing cue and there'll be deer in headlights, not an expression in the room. You need to know how to handle that. And you need to have enough confidence in your own teaching that it's not you, it's them. You also need to know how to change things up, because if you get deer in headlights and you're halfway through the class and they're still not warmed to you, then you better know how to do something about that, because you're relying on those people to come back to your next class. That's how you're going to earn a wage. And if people are not rebooking with you, if you're on piece rate, so some studios are going to be paying you per student, you're not going to be earning a very big commission. But B, if you're on an hourly wage, I can tell you now that you're not going to be invited to cover anybody else's shifts. And if you don't improve pretty quickly, then you're probably not going to have a job. So learning how to hold the room comes with confidence, consistent learning, and consistently having the opportunity to hold the room in a safe space. And that's partly what we do in our face-to-face mentoring workshops. So say we learn the exercises, and we'll always learn like enough exercises for the day that the students then can sit down and start to write programs, and then they have to teach their program to the class. So we can give feedback. You know what? That didn't flow very well because first we started on the box and we did a couple of exercises. Then we took the box off and we laid down on the machine. We did some exercises. Then we stood back up and we put the box back on and we sat on the box. And then we took the box off and we stood on the machine. And then we put the box back on. Holy moly. Why did we just take the box off 3 times and put it back on? Did that feel good for anybody? No. Okay. So guys, what have we learned now? When we put the box on the machine, let's do all of the exercises we want to do on the box and then move on. Would you know that if you didn't experience it? Probably not. Sorry, just had a drink. Why wouldn't you know that if you hadn't experienced it? Because sometimes things look okay on paper, but they don't feel good in the body. So sometimes we can create lesson plans. And I know with the online space, that's something that we all have to do, online and face-to-face. we practice creating lesson plans, but sometimes those lesson plans don't work. And so it's so important that you have time to be able to practice those lesson plans with your fellow students, because your friend that you're practicing on, or your mum that you're practicing on, your boyfriend you're practicing on, they don't know. They don't necessarily know what feels good. They perceive you as the expert. And this is what happens if you only need to know a little bit more than the person that you're teaching. So even though you are a student teacher, the people that you're teaching perceive you as an expert. And so let's get you the support that you need to make sure that you can step into that role as soon as you can. Because there's nothing worse than down the track, you go for a job at a boutique studio. Boutique studios generally are the ones where people who have a diploma in Pilates are teaching, and you go for a job there and you've got your fancy piece of paper in your hand, you know, that you're, in inverted commas, Pilates reformer certified. And generally, you know how you get a job? You get on the floor and you teach a class, and you teach this class, and it's like you're not holding the room. You don't know how to project your voice because you haven't practiced projecting your voice, because you haven't gone to any face-to-face workshops. All you know is to speak from your throat. Nobody ever told you about speaking from the diaphragm. And even if you did, they did, but you didn't get to learn it with anybody, so you're not quite sure if you're doing it right. So halfway through the class, you start coughing, your throat hurts, you've got the box on and off the machine 3 times, and I can tell you what, you're not going to stick around, not in a boutique studio where everybody's got a diploma, because these are the things that we do in the diploma. These are just a given. You spend 700 hours in your studio at a diploma. I think it took me close to 12 months, and I was in the studio every day. My husband washed dishes in a cafe. I waited tables at night, and during the day, I was in that studio 6 hours a day. That's how I got a diploma, which I understand that times have changed. I don't want to be the old woman who's telling people, oh, back in my day. It's not back in my day. I'm just saying this is the expectation of a studio owner. This is the expectation of people who are paying money to come to Pilates. I think as with an online training platform, you don't get to learn how to cue multiple bodies in one class. So say even if you did understand all of that, if you could say to yourself, no, we definitely teach, well, I definitely understand if somebody is bracing their body when they're doing their footwork, I can identify that, I can help that. I definitely understand if somebody's holding their breath when they're doing the footwork, I can cue that, I can see that. I definitely understand the flat-footed person and the high-arched person and the differences in their placement on the bar. I can cue that. Can you cue all of that in one class? Can you get to all of those people without disrupting the class? So you keep the flow of the class, you're helping each of those people at the same time or when they need your help, and it doesn't impede on anybody else's experience. That is key to becoming a Pilates professional, is being able to have 10 bodies in front of you, being able to put a class together that is appropriate for the 10 bodies in front of you, regardless of who walked in the room, regardless of what class you put together, because people are not generic. Nobody is generic. And when we see the marketing, Pilates is for everybody. No, it's not. Pilates is not for everybody. Pilates is for your body, and you're all individual bodies within this big room. And I've chosen probably one of the hardest ways to teach, which is a reformer class where everybody's doing the same thing at the same time. But I've got 10 people who have different needs and 10 people who have different understandings of their body, 10 different languages, 10 different body types, 10 different pains and idiosyncrasies. Realistically, being a reformer teacher, you're a circus performer. You've got to hold that room. You're juggling 10 balls at once. And every ball has to stay in the air just at the right moment for just the right amount of time for the balls to land perfectly so that you can continue juggling and make it look beautiful so that you appease the crowd. So being able to cater to multiple bodies in one class is just one of the things that would be expected of you as a reformer instructor. You simply don't get to learn that if you're practicing online, not even if you've got 100 people online and you're teaching it, because you simply cannot see all those people either. So if you learn an online teacher training, the only way you can really ever teach is online, because then you're never going to have the hands on the bodies. You're never going to see the bodies in real life. You can't see the body close enough But I can tell you what, you better have the skills of somebody who's seen 10,000 bodies before you get online, because otherwise they may as well be watching a free YouTube of anybody teaching anything. It is not going to be Pilates. When COVID hit and I went online to teach Pilates classes for my clients, whoa-wee, it was tough. And I know that some of the teacher training programs that offer online learning are telling their students that you could earn $120,000 a year teaching online. Yeah, probably you could, but it's not easy. It's certainly not easy. And you're certainly not going to be getting the feedback from your clients that you get when you get to see somebody in the flesh. And if you haven't listened to my last episode, which is about the vagus nerve and the importance of vagus nerve tone and the community, being in a room with other people, touching other people, conversing with other people is all about vagus tone. And it's a big reason why when the whole virus thing was out and we weren't allowed to teach, people were beside themselves. People needed to be in community. There was no community. And I actually wrote to our health minister multiple times, many letters, expressing how important it was for people to be continuing to come to Pilates, because Pilates was one of the things that was banned. So we need to understand, and assuming that this is something that the online courses teach, we need to understand exactly how the body responds to being in an online classroom compared to in a face-to-face classroom, and the health benefits of both. The health benefits of a face-to-face classroom far outweigh those of an online classroom. I'm not saying online classrooms aren't great. They actually make Pilates available and accessible to a lot more people, and that is a beautiful thing. There is no doubt about it. But what I'm saying is the experience of that person is going to be justified by the ability of that instructor to give them the information that they need to be able to perform Pilates. And that is very difficult to do, even if you've got years of experience, of hands-on experience. So Pilates is for the individual. It's not generic. I guess ultimately my message here is that students deserve to be mentored. Students deserve a space where they can have vulnerable conversations, where they can make mistakes, where they can learn together, where they can learn from each other, where they can have hands on bodies, eyes on bodies, and eyes and hands on them. It's as simple as that. And I ummed and ahed for a long time before I'd started producing a teacher training experience. In my day, when the airport was a marsh, no, I'm only joking, it wasn't that long ago, there was no online learning. It wasn't even a thing. And I recognized that the online space has opened up huge potential to a lot of people. And I think that it's a very powerful tool for all of us. It's powerful for me in that I can get my message out there. I can help more people. I can serve more people. I can make a positive difference to more people's lives. But it's very important that we don't lose sight of what it is that people want from Pilates and what it is that Pilates has been offering people for over 100 years. It has been offering people to help them change their lives through movement and through understanding their own body and movement. And for you to understand your own body and movement, I highly suggest that you find a face-to-face mentor. If anything, I feel like the online space is a great opportunity for further learning, because I can't tell you the tens of thousands of dollars I've spent throughout my career going to workshops. Before there was online stuff, there really hasn't been any quality online stuff until about 2020. That's really when it started to come about. But before then, as somebody who lives remote, so I get it, I really do understand how difficult it can be. I've flown down to Adelaide to do the Polestar diploma, and I had to fly down there 4 times, pay for flights, accommodation, a rental car 4 times. I've flown down to Brisbane, hung out and done the body organics training, again, flown down multiple times. never had to hire a car, but always at a hotel or Airbnb. They started to pop up, which was handy. And that was all time away from family, time away from my own studio, time away from my own income. And I live a 4-hour flight away from those places. It's a long way to go. I've flown to Scotland, to Hong Kong, to America, to England, all just for learning experiences, to Melbourne, to see Tom Myers, so many places, Bali multiple times, and nothing. And I've done a lot of online stuff now because now it's available and there's some amazing things being produced online by some very well educated and very inspiring leaders. Nothing compares to the hands-on experiences that I've had. And not only for my own body and for seeing the bodies in front of me, but also for creating community, for making connections with people in my industry that I call my peers, and for getting to know other people and getting to understand the gravity of the impact that we are having as educators globally. You will only ever experience that face to face. So if anything, further education, online, fantastic. If you don't want to fly all over the world, I get it, but give yourself what you deserve as a student and as a student for life. Check in, whoever it is that you learn with, go face to face. I promise you it will change your life forever. That's it for me, folks. I'm so glad that you've joined us today. And speaking of online, of course, I do have a couple of resources in the show notes for you. There's a 7-day home program exercise regime. We work face-to-face with clients in the studio, and we've got 2 services. So we have the clinic where we're seeing people with injuries, disease, pathologies, chronic conditions. And then we've got the reformer where we're seeing maybe common pain, but mostly fitness. People in the clinic, we always send them home with homework. So I know from experience that Pilates changes your life, but it's not a magic pill. It takes time and it takes commitment. So when people come into the studio, our clients start to learn what their home program is, and then they practice that home program as a warm-up series when they first come in. Over the years, our staff have all got really good at stick figures. We are master stick figure people. And you possibly understand where I'm coming from. But because we can access things online, and this is where the online space is amazing, we have put together 4 exercise options for common conditions that we see in clinic. So we've got the exercise programs only go for 20 to 30 minutes. One is foundation moves. So just some basic Pilates moves that most people can do, depending on their pain and restriction. One is Pilates for hip mobility and strength. So specifically for either runners, cyclists, or even people who are standing or sitting for long periods of time. We've got a home program for knee pain or knee pathology. It's something that we see a lot in the studio. And to tell you the truth, as it happened, I ended up with a knee injury. So I thought I'd just put together pretty much what I was doing as my own rehab at home. And the last one is Pilates for desk workers. And this one is the only one really that uses props. The desk worker program was specifically put together for a client who had a couple of props at home. And then we decided, you know what, it's something that we see all the time, and they're props that are easy for people to purchase. So we thought we'd add in a little prop one. Like I said, they're like 20 or 30 minutes long. It just gives you an idea of the types of things that we send people home with and that we expect our clients to be practicing on the days that they're not coming to us. As a bonus, I have also put in there a breath workshop, which really is just explaining Pilates breath and some breathing techniques, which our clients would really benefit from. But I thought if you guys want to check it out, you're very welcome to. It's free anyway for 7 days. You can share it with anyone that you want to. And please remember to like the podcast, share it with your friends, especially share this one with your friends if they're considering looking at teacher training. Obviously, I've got a teacher training option for people in 4 locations in Australia. But even if they didn't go with Pilates Pro Academy, there are some great options out there in our country in Australia, but also in the States. I'm initially trained with body arts and science. There's some amazing educators out there who are still offering face-to-face because this is where it counts for you as a student. Anyway, share the love, share the word, and share the podcast with your friends. I really do appreciate you being here. I'm going to see you next Wednesday. I'll be here no matter what. Love you guys. See you soon.
Now, before I finish up today, I just want to remind you, if you have enjoyed this episode, I would love it if you like and share it with your Pilates professional and movement loving friends so that we can get the word out there and really create a community right here in this hub. Be sure to check out my website, thepilatesprofessional.com.au, and have a look if you can find any workshops, which I'm sure you can, that you may be needing right now. Remember, I also do a 6-month reformer teacher training mentor program. I call it a mentor program because I literally personally mentor each student through their own program until they are ready to teach reformer. It's what I specialize in. And I think that this is one of the biggest missing links in our industry right now, is that we have these wonderful diploma level training workshops that people can do to become very comprehensively trained in Pilates. But when it comes to reformer, it's so wishy-washy out there that you could become an instructor online with no personal access to a mentor ever, or you could become a reformer instructor as a stepping stone to diploma level training. So where I come into it is I just do reformer teacher training that is recognized and recommended by the Pilates Association of Australia, which means that my students then become members of PAA. It's super important for our industry and it's what our students deserve. So if you know somebody who is looking to become a reformer teacher, then this is where you want to send them, the pilatesprofessional.com.au. They can reach out to me. I can have a call with them and see if I have a program that is coming up that is suitable for them. And or I also do a host of online workshops for you to expand your repertoire and your understanding specifically of the Pilates work. Thank you so much for joining me. I look forward to you listening to the next episode next week. I'm Katie Crane, the Pilates Professional.